Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast.
Neil with debates, thoughts, questions.
Sorry, I just fallen asleep for a second there.
That was 3 minutes, Neil. Give me a break. I could have went on all day how we were going to thrash your team.
Is it still Thursday? Yeah, they are going to make Tom Brady look like Lamar Jackson. That's how bad they are.
Neil is on fire, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it was terrible. Come on, guys. That was the worst performance of week one. Surely
I'm not arguing with you. I agree wholeheartedly.
It's week 2 of the NFL regular season. Here we go.
That's how we start. Yeah, baby.
32 SuperFans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
1 PodVader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This,
no question about it,
is Next Fan Up.
We're going to unleash hell here in December.
Hello and welcome to the Don't Overreact to Week 1 edition of the NFL's favorite podcast, that being Next Fan Up. Hey everybody, it's PodVader here. I don't know if we're actually the NFL's favorite podcast. Maybe we are. Nobody's ever said that we aren't. So until we're told we aren't, we are. Excited to bring you week 2 of all of the NFL action. We've got quite a show in store for you. Not only will we give you all the picks, all the locks, all the upsets, but we're also going to talk a little bit about Antonio Brown. I'm sure you're all super excited about that. Here are the guys that are going to be talking to me. It's the 3/4 of the NFC East. And as always, we start across the pond with our Redskins superfan, Neil. Hello, Neil.
Hey, Jay. Hey, James. I'm glad to listener that Kevin has kept his word, and because he is a man of his word, and is not here this week after losing his bet last week, Jay. That's great news, huh?
I don't believe that's the case because the laughter you hear in the background is Kevin, our Cowboys superfan.
Typical Dallas fan.
Mm-hmm. I was given an exemption to come on the show, and it bypasses everything that was said last week. So, Neil, much like your Redskins, you are going to take an L here.
You're just lucky that Jay and I didn't have a vote in this process.
Neil, I know you wanted me on. Don't lie.
Well, the guy who provided that exemption is our Eagles superfan, James. Hello, James.
Hey, guys. Kevin, don't make me regret this. Just want to say before we get started, some of your teams are going to be 0-2 this week. Don't panic. Some of your teams are going to be 2-0 after this week. Be worried.
That is what it's all about here. Overreaction week here in the NFL. We're going to try and tamp that down just a little bit. Before we get into all of that, if you want to participate with us, send us your comments, nextfanup@gmail.com. You can tweet us at NFU Podcast. And, of course, we're always available on Facebook, facebook.com/NFU Podcast. I know we've got a few new Facebook friends, so go ahead and check us out there. We have all of our podcasts there. Monty's been posting wonderful memes in response to our podcasts, which is great. Monty's our Raiders superfan, and oh boy, the one meme that I saw, or a couple of memes that I saw about the Raiders, is they couldn't be more excited that Antonio Brown is no longer their problem. And I'm going to start here. As Antonio Brown is now my problem / the New England Patriots problem, I didn't want him. I want to give him back. Is there a give back policy? Is that possible? Can we just, we're sorry, we don't want him. You know what? You can even keep you can just have him back. Here you go. Have him. The Patriots don't need Antonio Brown. Sure, he's a great talent and he'll improve the offense tremendously, but he's also a me first guy. He doesn't fit with the Patriots way. I don't understand the move in any sense of the mean. And now he's being accused of sexual assault. There's a lot of things surrounding that don't seem to add up or make a lot of sense. Just like Antonio Brown doesn't seem to add up or make a lot of sense. All of that said, I'm starting to feel like this sexual incident that occurred with this particular accuser, Brittany Taylor, there's some fishiness around there. First of all, we know her name. I don't remember the last time I ever heard of a rape case where the victim's name was actually provided and made public. I thought we were keeping that anonymous to protect the victim, but apparently her name is everywhere. Secondly, in the evidence that we've been allowed to see, we've only seen one side of the story. We have not seen Brittany's responses to any of the things that Antonio Brown has said to her. I also wonder why the media has reported that some of the emails and texts that he has sent her were bragging about some of the incidents. The way that I read those, it was more in a sarcastic tone, like, oh yeah, I did that. And there's a lot of fishiness to it. And I don't necessarily want to get into any of that, but more of fact that, and we'll start with you, James, because I asked you this before we started, is this incident being put under such a spotlight because it's Antonio Brown versus somebody else?
And I think that's the key here, as far as all the coverage that it's getting. And granted, in previous domestic violence, sexual assault cases that we had against other high-profile players in the past, eventually it would just, find its way out of the news cycle as far as this realm of sports. But this has pretty much been the first, second, and last thing talked about in every football outlet known to man over the last couple of weeks, ever since he signed with the Patriots. Because of his celebrity, because of all the antics that he presented, starting with his last season in Pittsburgh, going off season in Oakland, the Hard Knock show, the way he was released from Oakland. This is just another stack on the pile, and it's compounding everything that the Patriots normally do on a day-to-day basis as far as how they conduct operations, because they're not allowing the media to talk to him, even though he's allowed to practice. And, of course, because this is an ongoing civil case, it's in his best interest to not say anything publicly or out in the media. So I'm wondering how he's behaving on social media, even though I don't follow him, because any and everything he does put out there on Instagram or Twitter will just be cannon fodder used against him when this thing does ultimately go to trial.
And I'm seeing things posted by non-sports outlets that Roger Goodell can show how much the NFL cares about women by putting Antonio Brown on the commissioner exempt list. But isn't this, I got to go to Kevin here, Neil. I was going to go to you, Neil, but you're not an American. But isn't this, Kevin, the whole point of you are innocent until proven guilty?
That doesn't work. It's guilty until proven innocent in 2019, if you ask me. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with James. It's definitely under the microscope because of his antics this year and due to the fact he's a celebrity, one of the faces of the NFL. There's no doubt about that. That puts the fire under him even more. But, I mean, I don't feel bad for him at all. He sort of brought all this upon himself. I don't know the credibility of the witness until further notice. I will assume she's credible. And as you know, it's not kosher to say that in 2019 that you don't believe the witness. I mean, the defendant. But, yeah, not really too concerned because I'm not a Patriots fan, honestly.
Well, and to that point, I remain a Patriots fan. I am not an Antonio Brown fan. I will continue to root for my team. I will not root for Antonio Brown. I can't give back the points and the stats that he'll rack up as a member of the Patriots, but I don't have to feel good about it. And to that degree, Neil, you were bringing up a decent point before I forced us to record. It's getting harder and harder to be a Patriots fan, quite honestly, with happy endings happening in Florida for the owner of the team. We've got cocaine smuggling happening in New Hampshire for one of the players. There was a murderer that was a tight end on this team. All is not as clean and pretty in Foxborough as we might want to believe.
Well, historically, you always think of the NFL employing these ex-law enforcement people to, check up on players, new players coming in, free agents, draft picks, and that's always been a real theme in the NFL to try and root out the problem guys. But here we have another situation where the Patriots appear to have not done their due diligence on this guy, a guy who we everybody in the world knows has had problems and continues, obviously, to have problems. Did the Raiders know? Did his agent know? It's all rather... If I was a Patriots fan, I would be, at this point, disappointed in the work done by the organization before recruiting this guy. It is a concern.
I mean, Neil, in the NFL for the last 10 years, it's usually talent trumps character issues. If you ask me, people don't really seem to care as much as they claim, as you said.
I would dare say that this whole concept that the NFL knows a lot more than what they've let on has been proven false in the last few years with the Ray Rice videotape. With this particular incident, it just seems like there's a lot more things that are happening that the NFL has absolutely no clue about. And all of a sudden they look like, I was going to make a really bad analogy there, but it looks like they're just a bunch of bumbling idiots at this particular point.
They are. They're your Inspector Clouseau, your Chief O'Hara to Commissioner Gordon. And Roger Goodell is playing that star role, and this is probably the only time you're going to hear me actively side with him. He's walking a thin line of how you obtain evidence that exists, because in some of the more high-profile incidents where video has existed that made situations a lot worse than initially reported, those who had the video were willing to give it to the league office, provided they paid for said video. The NFL was not willing to do that because they don't want to set a precedent that people can get rich off selling video of players behaving badly. TMZ, on the other hand, always the one to break news with shocking video obtained showing player behaving badly, like Ray Rice in the elevator, like Kareem Hunt in the hotel lobby earlier this year. They're willing to do that because that's how they make news. The NFL does want to, I do believe that the NFL wants to do right by the public and its players, but the bottom line of accomplishing both of those things doesn't always work in concept with the process of how to go about doing that. And they pretty much want to do things the legal way so that there is no recourse of, they didn't properly investigate or they didn't, properly pursue the right channels to handle a situation. They learned a lot from completely botching the fiasco that was Ray Rice.
I would just go back to what Kevin said about the NFL not caring. I wonder, maybe it's more like what James is talking about there, where perhaps the NFL hasn't caught up with the digital age in which we are living, where videos, social media, it's very hard to police that. And of course, the things, these texts we've read or emails, wherever they were, that he had sent her, we wouldn't have seen that 25 years ago. Nobody would have seen that because they wouldn't have really have existed. So that information is just out there all the time, and it's very difficult to control news as it was 20 years ago. And maybe the NFL is catching up to that.
No, yeah,
but Neil, this is my counter to that and what I was saying earlier. Say you own a Fortune 500 company. I'm not an employee for your company, but I catch one of your employees in, say, a gang-style beating of a random passerby one night at a club because the passerby just, said, "Shut up, get out my face." And your employee and his coworkers jumped this guy and beat him up in the street. And I have video of that. And I come to you and say, "Hey, I have evidence that your guy is guilty, but the only way you're going to get it is if you pay me $25,000, $35,000. I mean, you can't set precedent that way. Yes, you want the video and you want me to hand it over out of, the goodwill of me doing the right thing. But once you start paying for stuff like that, then you have the whole general public coming out, and every time anybody of note in the NFL is walking the street, hundreds of camera phones coming out, waiting for them to mess up and do something they shouldn't be doing.
25 years ago, we didn't have that. There's no camera phones.
I understand that, but this is the age we live in now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right, yeah.
I would also say if somebody approached you and said, "I've got video that shows that this man is 100% guilty," but you have to pay me, the first thing I go is, well, evidence exists. So whether or not it's